Amanda Lewis is a product manager at Versaterm who has been working on a product called CaseWorks for Schools, which endeavors to help identify students who are having behavioral issues to provide them with help and support that they need in order to be successful and emotionally stable. We have asked her on to discuss this product and how it can be used to help keep schools safe. This is Lifeline. Thank you for joining us today. I am your co-host, Gary, and with me as always is your host, Erica.
Hello.
And we have on a special guest today, Amanda Lewis. Amanda, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
So, yeah, we were kind of talking about the show a little bit about CaseWorks for Schools. It's a product Erica and I really don't know a whole lot about. So would you mind kind of telling us what it is and what its goal is?
Absolutely. So, CaseWorks for Schools is a behavioral threat assessment and management tool. It's a lot of words that essentially means that it is designed to help schools work with students who may have behavioral issues and help them implement positive behavioral change in that student's life by bringing together a multidisciplinary team of professionals. So, that can include law enforcement, mental health professionals, teachers, people who know the student well, and help them assess, what's going on in the student's life that may have prompted an incident, and then how can they intervene to help get the student on a little bit more stable footing.
Okay.
Wow. That's amazing.
So,
go ahead, Gary.
So, I work at a police department and we use Versaterm, which is a record management software. So that's mainly how I associate things that are Versadex based, and CaseWorks is for schools is like that. So I'm kind of picturing this as, you kind of have a database of each of the students, and whenever an event happens, you might put it in the database and say, hey, this student just had their dog die. They get 3 points towards the behavioral cliffside that they're heading toward. I know that's probably not right, but is that kind of along the right lines?
Yeah, you can look at it that way. I'm going to add a little more nuance. So there are a couple different ways that the system can be used. We have some customers where every student who is enrolled is in the system, and they're looking at it as an overall behavioral health and wellness tool. Then we have other customers where they're only going to put students in the system when an incident occurs that involves the student. A lot of times, when we hear, oh, incident in a school, you're thinking something like, oh, it's a gun, it's a bomb threat, like the really big, scary things. While, of course, those incidents can be put into CaseWorks, that's really not what it was designed to deal with. It wasn't designed to deal with those really emergent situations. It's designed to deal with a little bit more of, oh, we're seeing some instances of bullying. We're seeing some patterns of behavior that are concerning. We're seeing, a lot of drawings or, statements that seem out of character. We're seeing more isolation. And how can we help intervene in this student's life proactively rather than reactively, to help make sure that they have all the supports that they need to really make good decisions in school.
The wheels are turning. So I heard drawings. So we're talking, usually from what I understand, when you're talking about drawings, we're talking about smaller children, because usually that's how they is that not true? And how would you use the drawings?
Well, so if you think about all the different ways that maybe someone could make a threat towards someone else, I mean, it could be done verbally, but it could also be done by drawing something and sticking it in their locker or sliding it into a backpack or a purse or, there are really so many different ways that kids can interact with each other and kind of act out emotions that maybe they don't have the skills currently to deal with.
That is amazing. So, say, I don't know, John, so if he is the student that receives a note, a letter, or something, and
Mhm.
he turns it over to the teacher, he goes into the system as having had this thing happen to him. And now
Mhm.
you mentioned a multidisciplined team. You begin to compile this team at that point, or is it just, hey, this happened, let's keep an eye out? And how would CaseWorks help with that? Or is that too much?
Oh, well, there were a lot of questions all in one, and so I'll try to hit all of
Sorry.
them. No, no worries. So, in the scenario that you pose, really we'd want to look and see, does the student know who did the drawing? Because the person who did the drawing, made the threat, they're the ones who are really kind of instigating this situation. Some customers will track who received that drawing as well. Others may not. They may just track, who instigated it. But then, your second question was then, like, is that when the team is brought together? And so really best practices for schools is that they have a process in place and they have already identified team members who are trained. And there are a number of different methodologies of behavioral threat assessments. So ideally, the school or the district has trained the team members in the school. These are the questions that we ask. These are the people who we interview. This is the timeline in which we would like to gather this information and make a decision about how serious this is. And then after that, this is how long we want to implement some supportive services, some case management, to help, affect that behavioral change in the student. I don't
Wow.
know if I hit on all your questions there.
Yes, you probably, and that's okay, because even if I didn't catch it all, I'm coming back around for something else because I've got
Excellent.
this is me. My brain
Okay.
is on overload right now with all the questions. So, okay, okay. So CaseWorks for schools takes the place of the paper shuffling that tends to happen like right now, because just your everyday school, the school that doesn't have this, they find the note, they talk to the student. Do you know who did it? Yes, I do. And now they're talking to this student. That student's talking to that student. There's stacks of paper mounting in each of their folders, but nobody outside the school maybe knows anything about it. And it sounds, it's just really inefficient the way it is right now, is what it sounds like to me. Is that
Absolutely, absolutely. And, one of the patterns that they see with kids, many of whom have behavior issues, is that they tend to move schools a lot. And that, as you pointed out, really the only people who know about this situation are the people who are in the school. And so if, well, Johnny or whoever, Susie, gets pulled out and moved to another school, that receiving school doesn't necessarily know where the student came from, doesn't necessarily know about any behavioral issues that they might have had, doesn't really know anything. And so it really puts them at a disadvantage to attempt to deal with, patterns of behavior. So one of the things that we were talking about before we got started is kind of this analogy, this medical analogy, where, if you've got a serious medical condition, so we've got the analogy with the multidisciplinary team, or maybe you've got a generalist, but then you've got a specialist, for the lungs or the blood work or, whatever it might be, and they all bring their expertise together. The other thing that they will have is they'll have your chart. They'll have your history. They'll know that this medication didn't work for you, and so we need to use this other medication. And so that's the other really kind of essential and often missing piece in addressing behavioral issues. If you think this is the first time that something has happened, you're going to respond differently than if you know that it's actually the fifth time it's happened and it's been escalating each time. You're going to respond entirely differently.
That is so true. So I'm thinking about districts even. So you think of one school, let's just say we live in Austin. So the Austin Independent School District, if the whole district doesn't have access, then maybe, this school over here may know, but this school doesn't know. And so this CaseWorks, is it like I'm trying to figure out how the best way to say this. Who would buy it? Would it be one school or a district? And so is that how they talk?
So we have statewide customer and district level customers. And so district level customers, the idea is that yes, if students transfer, if it just think about they're going from, elementary to middle school or middle school to high school, their history can move along with them. And sometimes, I know that there are concerns around, not being able to leave your history behind you. Kids, teenagers, hormones, they say things, they do things that, we all know we shouldn't do. And maybe this is something that's going to, track with them the rest of their lives. That's not the intent behind CaseWorks. And it really is up to the districts, the states to implement some safeguards to make sure that that doesn't happen when it shouldn't. But the ability to transfer records and give the other schools really the benefit of all the learning that you've done in your own school in an attempt to help this student, it's invaluable.
So the safeguards you were talking about, so there was an article that you wrote. Was it district? What was it? District administration, I think.
Really?
And one of the key phrases that I picked up. Gary got that. One of the key phrases I picked up on was the unbiased. The whole idea behind is to while keeping this information central or making it available to as many in the network as should have it, you want to present it in a way that is not biased against the student so that they are harmed by it down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we don't want that. And really, one of the major principles behind CaseWorks is the belief that we all can change, that just because we've done one bad thing or even a couple bad things doesn't mean that we can't change. We can't go on to have incredibly successful and healthy and productive lives. And
Sure.
So that really is the motivation behind what we do. And we believe that our communities and our country can be safer because of this incremental, proactive approach.
Yeah, catch it early and give the student a fighting chance to
Yeah,
make change, because
yeah,
that's the beauty of catching it early, right? We can
absolutely.
head it off before it goes off the rails completely.
Yeah. And kids have so many stressors, that parents get divorced or they move and they didn't want to. They broke up with their boyfriend, girlfriend. They, got in a fight with their best friend that, and a lot of times, we don't come born with the skills, to work through things. I mean, as adults, we know this. There are so many times I've
Yeah.
thought, boy, I wish this came with a user manual. And so this is really an opportunity for us to, step in as adults and help kids when we see that they're struggling with something.
Nice. Did you have something, Gary? I saw your wheels turning.
Well, yeah. So this is kind of a product that helps track and evaluate how the students are doing in terms of how, if there's problems that are escalating. And I imagine that the program has some robust reporting software, or Well, in like Versaterm, you can get like heat maps of crime to say like, okay, crime in this area is getting worse.
Right.
And do you guys have, I guess, systems in place in CaseWorks for schools where you can say like, alert me when you start seeing patterns in multiple kids, or um, like how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so yes, we do have reporting tools, but I am also always working on our roadmap to see, what we're building out next. And particularly for those schools where all of their students are in the system, so you're really able to track, okay, with this incident, this was the person who initiated the incident. This person was, kind of the target or the subject matter, the person who received, whatever the incident was, if it was a threat or anything else. And then these were the people who were witnesses. And one of the things that I think that we could, do some great things with is, some mapping there. And because kids have complex social networks, and the teachers observe it in the schools. When I talk with teachers, they say, who's with who, and I think one of the things that CaseWorks, I hope will be able to do is take some of those things that teachers are able to anecdotally observe, but we don't have data around, and make it a little bit more concrete so that those connections can be drawn, and so that you can have an idea of like, oh, wait, tensions between these two people seem to be escalating,
Yeah.
someone, broke up and now they're with someone else and there's, tension there. I don't know, all different sorts of things can happen. And so we can kind of, even if it just helps teachers keep an eye out. They're standing out in the hallways, they're seeing what's happening. Sometimes you can see something and just say a word, divert something, and it can keep a, argument or from escalating.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess the inputs to this, to the CaseWorks program is managed by that group of like, you said 5 people or so that work there. So like an individual teacher wouldn't just log in and say, let me have my note. They take it to one of their, I don't know, champions of the program.
Yeah, I know it would really all depend on the business processes that the school or district or state has in place. It is a flexible system, so however the customer has it set up, the process that they follow, we can get that process set up in the system. So the assessment tool that they use, who has permission to do what, all of that can be configured to meet that specific customer's needs, because schools in one part of the country are going to be different from schools in another part of the country, and even just districts within a state, they may have some different rules in place there. So but yes, ideally the customer has those processes in place, and then the person who has those permissions can go in, create that incident. One of the customers that we're working with, they have a process for even saying, what, we put this in as an incident, but turns out it wasn't anything.
Right.
The kind of example that we have is, a kid says they're going to blow up the bathroom, and they mean one way, not,
Yeah.
the threatening way. And so that might be one of those, well, this was an unfounded incident. We got a little more information, and
That's good.
turns out we need to talk with someone about what they're saying they're going to do in the bathroom. But
Sure.
but once again, the idea is, you're not just dealing with those emergent situations. You really are looking at everything, and even there you can see, okay, well, this kid maybe has a flair for colorful language, and so we
Sure.
can address things that they say appropriately, and respond well. Yeah.
And they're not marked as,
Yes.
just this kid who made this horrible threat. And so it turned out it's just there. And there's no follow through, there's no wrap up, there's no, and like you said, just clearing it as it was not what we thought it was.
Mhm.
All is well. moving on and kind of like closing out a case, if you will. It was opened, we worked it, we investigated. Turned out it was not anything like we thought.
Yeah.
Note, maybe have a conversation about language and moving
Yeah.
on. And it doesn't take a
Exactly.
5-person disciplined team to work that out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And some of our customers, they have, the chair, the coordinator who is really responsible for shepherding these incidents through their review process, and they can make that decision on their own so that they don't have to pull in the whole team. But then, if they decide, you know what, this is serious enough, we can pull in the whole team, and then they can go in and they can do interviews with everyone that, might have some information and add it all into the incident so that they really have that holistic view of what's going on in the student's life.
That's crazy because that was the term in that was rolling around in my head, a holistic view, looking at the whole situation, the whole student, the whole
Mhm.
person, and not just this incident or this behavior. Because I can just imagine someone hearing about this. CaseWorks sounds happy enough. It sounds like, oh, okay, that I get that. That makes sense. Casework, right? We all think, who doesn't love a good caseworker? That's just what you think about it. Work with me here, Gary. It doesn't
Okay, all right.
sound it doesn't sound threatening, but if you say threat assessment, defenses go up.
Yep.
I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. Are you going to be targeting my kid for what? And what does that look like, your threat
Mhm.
assessment? And who might have a happy typing finger, trigger finger, whatever? I can imagine a parent going, I don't want my kid marked.
Yes.
Tell me that your
Yes.
product is not going to do that, or principal or whoever might be um, the decision maker in this case to try to purchase this program. What do you say to them? I know you said some stuff in the beginning, but convince me, the one who's going, don't be marking my kid.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there's a two-pronged approach. One is making sure that your school, your district, your state has good policies in place to make sure that there's a review process. So, we have seen with some customers where, there's a review process with the principal, and there's a review process with the at the district level. And then there's even a district team that can get involved. And so you have some business processes that are built in to help make sure that you don't have kids who are being targeted, and or kind of unfairly marked. And then the other thing that I would say is that, particularly for situations like this is when I really would recommend implementing the system in such a way that it's just an add-on to your student information system. All the kids are in it. It's not just the bad
Mhm.
kids or the troubled kids or whatever. Because, I mean, let's be honest, all of us have some, times when we are not our best. And, what I want on those days is for someone to be willing to take a look at the whole circumstance. So, I snap at my husband around not helping me figure out dinner, but I want him to understand that maybe it was a hard day at work. Maybe I have a migraine. Maybe, that there are all these other things that might be going on. And so please pull in the information to help you respond appropriately to me when I'm not at my best.
Yeah.
And I think that's all that we can all want out of life, and for our kids. I hope that there are professionals at my kids' schools, who will let me know, hey, I'm a little worried about your kid. How, has anything changed at home? Are they okay? We want that because, we're sending our kids out into the world, and, they have exposure to so much more than I
Uh-huh.
in the mid to late 90s, had. And
Yes.
um, there's so much out there, and it's so much harder to control the influences and what they're seeing. And so another set of eyes, another set, of people who care. And teachers are some of the most caring people in the world. I mean, they
They should
go
all be
out.
millionaires.
Amen. Like, they're not
Yeah.
paid. They deal with really difficult situations and things that, I don't even know that they're always trained to handle just, some of the emotional stuff that happens in schools. And we want to provide tools to support the people who are doing the really hard work.
Yeah, absolutely.
You brought up some interesting points there, and I kind of had a couple questions about them. Would the I guess the data collected be available to parents or again, like you have a record management
Mhm,
software, so you're not the one making the decisions, it's the school
mhm.
districts. But by and large, in the school districts that have implemented this, have you noticed that it's like the parents have a login that they can use, or is it more, uh, you know, tell me what you have in the file kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's more the latter. So generally, it is the professionals who are employed by the school district, the school system, the state, and any other accompanying entities with whom they have information sharing agreements who would have direct access to the system. But for FERPA compliance, we do need to make sure that should a parent come in and say, "Hey, I want to know what you've got on my kid," we can get that information out of the system and to the parent because they are entitled to be able to get that information when they come in. But that's a little bit different from like direct login access, which is not something that we're looking at because we are storing sensitive information. There is HIPAA protected information in here, and so we have to have ways of making sure that that information is protected and can be accessed by who needs to access it,
Yeah.
and then can be requested by others and go through that school level, district level approval process.
Wow. So you mentioned something about the teachers being trained, and you may have answered this question. Forgive me if you have. The teachers would not be directly responsible for managing this. This is going to be higher, right? Probably like the principal, assistant principal, and then maybe pull the teachers in if need be, or
It will all depend on that school district or that
how
state's
they want it.
policies
Yeah, yeah,
around behavioral threat assessment. I do think best practice is to have someone in the school who is trained in how to enter this information into the system and deal with it. For more rural schools or smaller schools, that person may be a regular instructional teacher. For your big high schools and metro areas, you might have a couple people, just depending on what the needs and how the school is funded, all those different things. But you definitely want someone who's trained in a specific methodology, knows how to implement it, knows how to follow it with fidelity, and then also hopefully have some review and approval process so you make sure there's just a check, trust but verified. We want to make sure that
yes.
things are being done the way they should be done.
How how does a so say someone wants this is probably going to go up on your site, right? So someone's shopping around, looking around, thinking about threat assessment, a
Mhm.
product, and they want to reach out to you. What's that process like? What do they, I mean, just click a button and you send out a team and you just set it up and it's done, or how long does it take?
It totally depends once again on the customer. So, we have customers that we are able to implement in a few months. There are others, when you're looking at like a statewide system, that's going to take a lot longer. We're probably going to do more specialized customization, for a statewide where they're really trying to implement this for everyone and they have a specific model, that they're using. For a little bit more off the shelf approach, it really would take just a couple months. We want to make sure the big things that we would do is meet with the customer and make sure we understand who's going to be using the system and what kind of access they need to have to the different parts of the system. And then if it's a district, we want to make sure we know all the schools and the districts so that we're able to get that information transferred. And, there may be things like, does your district or state have a single sign-on, which, is a way for entities to tie together multiple different systems that they use. So you only have to log in once, but then you have access to all of your tools. I have that, with, Microsoft, things where I log into one thing and then everything else is logged in. So we'll do that type of analysis with the customer just to make sure we have all those bases covered. And then we'll get into getting that system stood up.
That you're along for the ride the entire way, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I assume most of the time in that process is going to be related on the customer's end because you're dealing only with government entities, and especially if you're doing a statewide thing, governments are known for being very fast and efficient in getting things. No, wait, no, that's not right. They're known for being extremely slow and having to go through layers and layers of bureaucracy. So implementing the actual implementation of it, probably almost I don't know, 90% or so would be based on how quickly the customer tells you what they need and works with you on that. Because it's not, y'all's end, it's, the government's end.
I mean, I have no comment there.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't say it, I did. So.
But yes,
I was crying. Did you see me? I was like, don't get involved.
We really want to partner with our customers. And sometimes, there are times when we've worked with customers and they're really figuring things out as they go along. And that's not a bad thing. We want them to really figure things out. And so sometimes that can result in a little bit of a longer implementation process. But if in the long run, it means there's higher user adoption, they're more satisfied with the system, they're really able to accomplish their goals and get done what needs to be done, then, in many ways, I think we feel honored. We're a trusted partner, and we can, in that process, we can offer some of our expertise, because one of the really cool things about being a vendor, and I say this from having been on the customer side and now being on the vendor side, is that we get to see the challenges that other customers have had. And so with new customers, we can say, hey, yes, you can do this way, but what we would really recommend is this other way, because it will help you bypass these, X, Y, and Z pitfalls. And we really do want to do that.
I would imagine that you'd get better data from those organizations that do it on a statewide level as opposed to a district level, because then you have, many, many more students that are kind of involved in this. Does it allow you to demarcate between this is for this school, and does it track when they move schools, or is it just sort of a free environment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So with our statewide customers, if I am in a school, I only can see those students who are assigned to my school. Once a student transfers to another school, depending on the school's business rules, we can retain that history so that you can continue to report out those historical numbers. We had X number of incidents, in our school, even though the student has moved on, but you're not going to see anything new about that student unless they come back to your school. Likewise, if you're at the district level, you're only going to be able to see, what's happening for your district. And then at the state level, what they tend to do is they don't have access into any of the nitty-gritty details, but what they are able to do is pull together the de-identified data. So there's no student identifying information associated with this data, but what they are able to do is look at and say, statewide, we had X number of incidents. They, 90% were able to be resolved within, 3-6 months, something that they can start to look at that kind of data. And then they can also look and see hey, we've got some districts here that maybe they're struggling following this process because we're seeing timelines being missed. We're seeing issues with this process, and that ultimately can impact school safety overall. And so they're able to, kind of in this cycle of identifying problems before they become really big problems, they're able to step in and say, hey, let's give you some more support because we're seeing these numbers and we want to see those numbers come up.
Okay.
That's because in my head I'm thinking of that reporting information going out, and you start noticing, like Gary was talking about earlier, like a heat map, if you will, and where there's a certain, I don't know, this district for whatever reason is starting to experience bullying issues, multiple students. What is going on over there? Maybe we need to do an anti-bullying campaign, or maybe we need to send someone special in to do a talk with, ex students. But I can just see it being, I don't know what the real problem is here, but I'm noticing that things are heating up over here. Let's reach out to this school and find out what is going on. I'm thinking from a state or even a district level. There's got to be something going on. What do we do? Or maybe we institute a whole campaign of anti-bullying, or see something, say something. We do that a lot in law enforcement. You always hear see something, say something. Or maybe we can get the teacher some additional education because we're noticing something going on. And maybe it's time to get law enforcement involved, because if I've got multiple students experiencing the same thing, now we might need some bigger help. I just feel like this could be customized to tackle anything.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. There's so much information that can be gotten from it, and so much good work that can be done with that information.
Wow, it can identify children that are starting to experience food insecurity, and I know that that's very specific, but if you're noticing that there's a economic factor involved, because you've got multiple students experiencing the same thing, and the teachers are the eyes and the ears no matter what program you put into place, because your disciplinary team or your discipline team, they can only see so much, but the teachers can see it all. And I'm just, wow, this is just mind blowing to me, especially the ones that would give them the opportunity to maybe not manage the information, but at least contribute. These are the things that I'm noticing. And they have an opportunity to pull all of that information and respond before it becomes this, the elephant in the room, the school shooting.
Absolutely.
Because that's the thing that we don't want to talk about, right? But it's immediately where my head went when I heard threat assessment. I'm like, okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that really is the goal, is preventing, is to keep us from getting there, to identify, the kids who are starting to isolate. They're maybe starting to frequent those online forums. They, have access to weapons in the home or elsewhere, and if those things get identified when they're starting out with, some bullying or, violent drawings or things like that, trouble, concerning posts on, Facebook or whatever social media platform, if you can intervene then, and try to help some positive change happen in that kid's life, maybe we won't get to those school shootings. And also, maybe by having these multidisciplinary teams in place, we'll have better communication between the schools and the law enforcement and the treatment providers, so that if anything bad does occur, those channels of communication are open. We know how to communicate. We know how to reach out. We know who to trust. We know, the first responders know, the schools and what they need to do, and everything else, so that, we can hopefully prevent things before they happen.
And just make it just a more healthy environment for students in general, period.
Absolutely.
They should be able to go to school and safely learn. and do all the fun things that happen when you're in school and be a little silly like you do when you're in school. And school dances aren't things to be worried about. And maybe,
Yeah.
who knows, maybe there might be a day when we won't need nearly as many metal detectors and so on and so forth. But it starts with, I would think something like this. And it's, wow, I wish they had this when I was going to school. I'm not going to
Yeah.
tell you when that was.
So one thing that people like users need to be careful of when they have programs is, the adage garbage in, garbage out. If you're putting bad information into the system, you're going to get bad results out of it. One of the things that I like about our program that we use, Versaterm, is it's got a little button that says, validate this police report before you send it in to make sure everything is correct. Are there sort of similar features set up in CaseWorks for schools?
Absolutely. And that validate process is absolutely in place, and it's based on the customer's business rules. So, one district may have different business rules in place from another district. They may have different fields that are required. And so we can set that up so that when all the information is entered in, the system goes through, it checks, it says, oh, wait, hold on. You missed this important field, or maybe there was a whole interview you didn't complete. And we've said that if it's this severity, you need to interview the student, or, whatever it might be, all those business rules. And then, I'm looking at the system right now, and there's that validate button. And then once everything is validated, it gets submitted. And then, that review process, if it goes through the principal, the district, whatever that review process might be, can then be started knowing that the user has at least filled out all the bare minimum fields that we said needed to be filled out.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the we in this case would be the user, because you guys make it so the program does whatever the user wants it to do. So they're like, you need to fill out these fields. That's when it'll flag. Okay.
Yeah.
Do y'all I guess have any like if there was a school administrator or superintendent listening and they were kind of interested, do you have any like data on any like improvements that this software has been able to help with?
So we're relatively new software, so I don't have data to provide yet, but my hope is that in the next 6 months, I will. We're rolling out one of our major customers toward the end of this week. I'm very excited about that, and we really are hoping to see some excellent data come out of that.
Well, it's a good time to be having the customers roll out. The school year's about to start, so
Yeah.
that should be a lot of fun.
Summer's getting shorter and shorter to me. I don't know what that is, but
Yes, I think so.
Well, everyone, thank you for joining us this week. Our guest has been Amanda Lewis with Versaterm's CaseWorX for schools. If you're interested in acquiring this program or looking at it, you can check it out on their website at Versaterm. And Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the insights you had, and we wish you the best of luck in having that successful program continue to help millions of students across the country.
Thank you so much.
Standing invite to come back. Thank you.
And if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you like and subscribe down below and leave us a comment. Or if you would like to, you can also shoot us an email to lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. From all of us at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary.
I'm Erica.
And we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.